I never imagined that a simple act of curiosity could change my entire life. I grew up believing that success was only the result of hard work, discipline, and effort, like everyone always says. But when I arrived in the United States, I realized there was another world. Invisible, silent, a world where the rules are different, where success, power, and influence are negotiated at tables that most people don't even know exist. And once you discover this path, there's no way to pretend it doesn't exist. For a long time, I wondered if everything I experienced was real, or if I was simply swallowed by a network of secrets so ancient, so well guarded, that they still operate in the shadows of the world today. Have you ever wondered how far someone would be willing to go to obtain power, money, and status? And even more, what is the true price of it? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference for YouTube to recommend this video to more people, and for me to continue bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's go to the video. When I arrived in the United States, everything felt like a distant dream that had somehow become reality. My uncle picked me up at the Philadelphia airport like someone who had already made it in life. Luxury car, impeccable suit, confident posture. He was, without a doubt, the pride of our family. I grew up hearing about him, about how he had left Mexico decades ago and, little by little, built an empire in the import and export business. But does anyone really build an empire like that alone? During the first months, my life revolved around work. I was his assistant, handling simple tasks, making copies, filing documents, serving coffee. It all seemed normal, up to a point. But there was something about his behavior, a calculated distance, a coldness that didn't match the image of a simple, successful businessman. And deep down, a question started to haunt my mind. How did someone who came from nothing manage to rise so high and so fast? It was on a seemingly ordinary morning that everything started to change. I was supposed to prepare the meeting room for an important appointment. As I placed documents on each chair, I noticed an object that wasn't there before. On the main chair, my uncle's chair, there was a book. But it wasn't just any book. The cover was thick red leather with a golden symbol in the center. It wasn't a triangle or a star or anything I had ever seen before. It was some kind of emblem, almost hypnotic, that seemed to pulse under the light. At that moment, something inside me told me not to touch it. But have you ever tried to ignore your own curiosity? Have you ever tried to pretend you didn't see something that, somehow, felt like it was calling out to you? My hands were sweating. My heart was racing. And even though I fought against it, I gave in. I opened the book, and I immediately realized that this wasn't meant for ordinary eyes. The first pages were filled with geometric symbols, strange diagrams, letters that resembled ancient alphabets. Something between Hebrew, Arabic, and Greek, but definitely none of them. Some figures looked like they came from medieval manuscripts. Others, from civilizations so ancient they aren't even mentioned in history books. Who could have written this? And for what purpose? That's when my eyes landed on a phrase in clear letters, right at the top of one of the opening pages. Guide for Initiates. Welcome to the true Masonic order. At that moment, I couldn't breathe. I had always heard about the Masons, who hasn't? But I never imagined I'd be this close to something like this. And as I kept reading, I realized it had absolutely nothing to do with the popular idea of Freemasonry. That thing about discreet meetings, philanthropy, and symbols scattered on old buildings. No, this was much, much deeper and infinitely darker. The pages spoke of origins that predated recorded history itself. They mentioned lost civilizations, Atlantis, Lemuria, and even cultures that officially never existed. There were references to ancestral entities, forces that have operated since before the rise of modern religions. And one name appeared frequently, but always incomplete, suppressed, as if writing it in full would be, in itself, a danger. How could something like this be hidden inside a simple meeting room? The text explained that the visible Freemasonry, the one everyone knows, is just a facade, a smokescreen, a public structure that hides a much older, more secret, and more powerful order. The inner order. A brotherhood that transcends governments, nations, and religions. They are not in power, they are the power. As I flipped through, I found descriptions of symbols used in rituals, internal laws, and even a coded list that seemed to be names or titles. One phrase stayed burned in my mind to this day. Here, everything that is given has a price, and everything that is taken will never be returned. At that moment, a question struck me like lightning. Was my uncle part of this? And if he was, how far was he willing to go? Time passed too quickly. When I realized it, there were only a few minutes left before the meeting started. I panicked. I quickly made some copies of the first few pages, hid the sheets among my documents, and placed the book exactly where it had been. I pretended nothing had happened. But was it really possible to pretend after opening that door? After seeing that? For days, those pages I had hidden became almost an obsession. Every night, alone in my tiny apartment, I read and reread them, trying to understand how far this went. And the more I read, the more I realized that this wasn't just a manual, it was almost a map. A map to something that seemed impossible to believe. But deep down, didn't I already know that it all made sense? After all, how do you explain certain things we see in the world? How do you explain people who come out of nowhere and suddenly are surrounded by wealth, influence, and power, as if the rules of reality simply don't apply to them? Is it just luck? Or is there something happening in the shadows that most people choose to ignore? With these thoughts consuming me, I started observing my uncle differently. His silences, his calculated glances, his nighttime disappearances. I began to realize he wasn't just a successful businessman. There was something more. Something I didn't want, or didn't have the courage to see until now. But nothing prepared me for what happened on an ordinary Friday. I was in the printing room, reviewing some contracts, when I felt someone approaching from behind. It was him, my uncle. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there looking at me, as if measuring every inch of my soul. Have you ever felt that? The sensation of being examined by someone who knows more about you than you do yourself? Then he spoke, calmly, but so directly that it sounded like a sentence. You opened the book, didn't you? My body froze. I tried to come up with an excuse, to deny it, to pretend I didn't know what he was talking about. But it was useless. He knew. Instead of getting angry, he gave a half smile. He stepped closer, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "Actually, that book was there because of you. I just needed to be sure you would find it. And you did. That means maybe you're ready. But understand one thing, nothing here is free. It never was. It never will be." For a few seconds, I wanted to believe he was joking, that it was just a provocation. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. There wasn't a shadow of doubt in his eyes. And then he opened a drawer in his desk, pulled out a wooden box, heavy with carved details. From inside, he took out an object that, just by looking at it, sent a chill down my spine, a hammer. But it wasn't just any hammer. The handle was engraved with golden symbols, and on the head of the hammer was a seal I recognized immediately, the same symbol from the cover of the book. He held the object for a few seconds and then, without taking his eyes off mine, said, "Today, you're going to prove to me if you're worthy. The janitor, that man who's worked here for years, failed. And today, he needs to understand that everything here works by merit and consequence." For a moment, I thought I was misunderstanding. I asked, "But what exactly do you want me to do?" He didn't blink, didn't hesitate. "You're going to go to him and make sure he never forgets his responsibilities again. I want you to break one of his legs. Simple as that." At that moment, my stomach turned. My mind felt like it wanted to escape my own body. And at the same time, a thought started haunting me. If I refuse, what happens to me? Do I go back to misery? Do I return to Mexico, to poverty, to watch my mother waste away without even being able to afford her medicine? I said no, that I wouldn't do it. I offered to return the book, forget everything, pretend nothing had happened. And at that moment, my uncle's face hardened. His expression became sharp, like steel. "No, kid. There's no going back. You've seen it. You've read it. You open the door. And whoever opens this door either walks through it or gets crushed by it." I thought about running, about escaping. But escape to where? He knew where I lived. He knew who I was. He knew everything. And deep down, did I even want to run? Or had a part of me already made the choice? When I realized it, the hammer was already in my hand. My fingers gripped the handle so tight it hurt. And before I could think of anything else, I heard his voice, firm and low. "Now he's coming." From that day on, nothing was ever the same. And if you think that after that I would have left, thrown everything away, and run, I ask you, run where? Go back to what? Once you cross a certain line, It's as if the world you once knew simply ceases to exist. And all that's left is to keep moving forward, even without knowing where this road ends. In the days that followed, I realized that my relationship with my uncle completely changed. He no longer saw me as the naive kid who had just arrived from the countryside. No, now he looked at me differently, like someone looking at a person who had just been tested and passed. Do you understand the weight of that? When someone who masters the rules of the game finally recognizes you as a useful piece. That's when the changes came. I no longer handled simple tasks. I never touched a photocopier again, nor brought anyone coffee. My new role was different. I started being assigned different things. Things that, if I told any regular person, would sound like lies. And maybe you're thinking, what could be so different? Believe me, I asked myself the same thing. My uncle started including me in the nights that, until then, were a complete mystery. Every time the workday ended, he left. Sometimes alone. Sometimes accompanied by men who, just by looking at them, you knew they weren't ordinary people. Were they politicians? Businessmen? Bankers? Mobsters? Maybe all of that, or maybe something even bigger. It was on one of those nights that he called me for the first time. He simply said, "Tonight you're not going home. You're coming with me." He didn't explain where. He didn't need to. He just handed me the keys to his truck and told me to drive. The destination? A place in the suburbs of the city, surrounded by mansions, perfectly trimmed gardens, and security that didn't seem designed to protect, but rather to keep people out. When I got to the gate, two men dressed in black, wearing golden masks, that's right, masks, approached. They didn't ask who we were. They simply looked at the license plate, nodded, and opened the gate. This wasn't a house. It was something else. A building with no windows, no signs, nothing that revealed what it was. It looked more like a bunker, a fortress. My uncle told me to stay in the car, and I obeyed. For hours, I sat there watching, and as the minutes passed, more cars arrived. All high-end, plates from various states. And the passengers? Older men, well-dressed, many in suits, others wearing long cloaks, and some with masks that looked like they came straight out of a movie, mixing secret societies, ancient rituals, and things that, honestly, we believe only exist in fiction. From where I was, I could only see part of the courtyard, but it was clear that this place breathed something different. Something heavy. You know that feeling when the air feels thicker? When you're in an environment where the normal rules of the world simply don't apply. That's when I realized, for the first time, that everything I had read in the book wasn't theory. It wasn't empty symbolism. It wasn't fantasy. It was real. Extremely real. Time passed, deep into the night, and when he came back to the car, I noticed his gaze had changed. It was as if he was testing how much I could handle, without even saying a word. On the way back, he finally broke the silence. "You know you're doing well. Very well. And I think you already understand how things work. Here, those who have because they paid the price. Those who don't, it's because they didn't have the courage to pay. And today, I'm going to be your sponsor. Your time has come." I didn't know how to react. "Sponsor? What exactly did that mean?" And before I could ask, he continued, "You're going to be initiated. But first, you need to be up to the task. You need to look like who you're about to become." He handed me an envelope. When I opened it, I realized it was filled with $100 bills. Then he concluded, looking directly into my eyes, "Go to the best tailor in the city and buy yourself a suit worthy of you. Tonight is your night. But remember, nothing here is free." At that moment, that old saying he always repeated hit me like a punch to the stomach. Nothing is free. And I knew that phrase never came without a price. Almost as if he were reading my thoughts, he added, "Before you go, there's one more thing. Tonight, you'll also settle the score with someone who disappointed us. The marketing manager, she failed. And you already know, in this game, failure has consequences. Just like you did with the janitor, now it's her." My whole body went cold. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part simply understood that from that moment on, I was no longer who I used to be. And if you think there's a choice, I ask you, after crossing certain lines, do we really still have the right to choose? The night was eerily silent. Even in a city that never sleeps, it felt like, at that moment, everything around me had simply shut down. As I put on the freshly bought suit, I couldn't stop staring at myself in the mirror. Who's that guy staring back at me? It looked like me, but at the same time it didn't. It's strange to think this, But is there ever a moment when we realize the exact second we stop being who we were and become something completely different? When I left the tailor shop, a limousine was waiting for me. My uncle was inside, this time wearing ceremonial attire, completely different from anything I had ever seen. It wasn't just a suit, it was a black tunic, embroidered in gold, full of geometric symbols and inscriptions that I immediately recognized from the pages of the book. I looked at him, and for the first time, I realized that the man I had called uncle my whole life was no longer just a relative. He was something else, something much bigger. The car drove in silence to the same fortified gate I had seen days before. But this time, we didn't go through the main entrance. The limousine entered through a side access, and from there, we followed a path of dark stones, lined with lit torches, which seemed to guide those entering toward a place where time didn't exist. When we got out, I realized there were no windows, nothing that allowed anyone to see in or out. It was like stepping into a space where the outside world simply no longer existed. We were guided by two men, both wearing golden masks shaped like human faces but expressionless. Smooth, no mouth, no eyes, just the contour of a face. And to this day, I still wonder, who were the people behind those masks? Were they businessmen? Judges? Politicians? Or something even worse? We descended a staircase made of polished white marble that reflected the light of the torches on the walls. With each step, the air felt heavier, more humid, denser, as if we were literally descending into the depths of the earth. And deep down, maybe that's exactly what it was. Was that place built there, or had it always been there, hidden, waiting for those deemed worthy to cross its gates? We arrived at a gigantic chamber. The dome-shaped ceiling was decorated with designs that resembled both astronomy and alchemy. Maps of constellations, concentric circles, triangles, symbols I recognized from ancient cultures like Egypt, Sumer, and even inscriptions that looked Etruscan, a language dead for millennia. But what caught my attention the most was what stood in the center, a black stone altar, and upon it a golden statue nearly 2 meters tall. That figure was something the human mind can't properly describe. It was a blend of man and creature. It had a human body, but the face looked like a fusion between a pharaoh and some kind of animal. Where the eyes should have been, there were 2 red gemstones that didn't just reflect light, they seemed to glow on their own, as if they were alive. Then I heard the sound of drums. Low, slow, continuous. Each beat seemed to sync with my own heartbeat. And one by one, other young men began arriving, guided by their sponsors. All of them, like me, dressed in impeccable suits but wearing expressions that ranged from fear to fascination. I looked at them and wondered, was any of them here by choice? Or were they all, like me, pushed to this door without fully knowing what they were stepping into? The silence was broken when a man stepped onto the altar. He wore a white tunic, a metallic crown, and held an enormous, ancient book with yellowed pages. He began to read in a language I couldn't identify. It wasn't Latin nor Greek, nor anything I recognized. And with each phrase, the attendees responded in a guttural chorus, as if they were chanting something far older than any known religion. Before I realized it, women wearing owl-shaped masks began circulating among us, carrying trays with crystal goblets. Everyone drank. And me. I did too. I didn't even ask what it was. Because at that point, did asking even make sense? In that environment, did questions even hold any value? That's when the side doors opened, and men entered, carrying something that froze me to the bone. They were people, alive, bound, black hoods over their heads, 7 in total. The priest then declared, with a voice that seemed to echo not just in the room, but inside my very mind, each initiate must make their offering. He who does not have the courage to seal a pact is not worthy to receive its rewards. My body locked up, my breathing stopped, and right there, for the first time, I understood that everything I thought was symbolic, ritualistic, metaphorical wasn't. It was real, brutally real. And now it was my turn to decide. But after everything, did I really still have a choice? I can't exactly explain what happened inside me at that moment. Part of me wanted to disappear, pretend that none of this was happening. But another part, darker, quieter, simply understood that from this point on, there was no turning back. And can you imagine what you would do if you were in my place? Is there a point where fear turns into obedience, or into something even worse? I was led to a marble fountain, where I washed my hands. The priest, with that tone of voice that seemed to vibrate deep into my bones, said that this act symbolized the purification of matter before the pact. But does washing your hands really cleanse anything after what comes next? They handed me a silver dagger, engraved with symbols I had already seen in the book and on the walls of the temple. Heavy, cold, and in that instant, I realized that the weight wasn't just physical. It carried the weight of the pact itself, the weight of everything that was about to happen. I walked toward one of the kneeling bodies in the center of the chamber. I had no idea who it was. No one did. Maybe that was intentional. Does ignorance make it easier, or just more cruel? As I got closer, I noticed a detail. The person's hands were tied, but there was a very specific scar on the left wrist. An old scar, one I recognized. My entire body went cold. My breath disappeared. My legs almost gave out. I ripped the black hood off the person's head, and in that second, my mind simply shattered. It was my mother. My world collapsed. My vision blurred. My heart felt like it was about to explode from my chest, and I could only ask in shock, why? What is she doing here? What does this mean? But no one answered. No one even moved. No one even seemed surprised. It was as if this was simply part of the game. I knelt. I held her by the shoulders. She was still breathing, weak, barely conscious. She opened her eyes, looked at me, and in that gaze, I understood everything. She knew. She knew exactly where she was. She knew exactly what I had gotten myself into. And in that look, there was no judgment, no anger, only sadness. With tears streaming down my face, I looked up at the golden statue, with those stone eyes that seemed alive, and I screamed, I don't want anything. Just give her back to me. I give up everything. Just bring her back. The priest approached, placed a hand on my shoulder, and with a calmness that still sends chills down my spine, he replied, what is given cannot be taken back. She no longer belongs to this plane. At that moment, something inside me simply snapped. Despair turned to rage, a rage I had never felt before. I stood up, turned toward the statue, and with all the fury I had, I screamed, then, if you can't give her back, take him. Take my uncle. End him now. What happened next didn't seem natural. It didn't seem of this world. The stones in the statue's eyes began to glow in a way that felt alive. The ground shook, and before anyone could even react, I heard a scream. My uncle's scream. I looked back and saw him being consumed. It wasn't fire. It wasn't heat. It was as if his very matter was disintegrating, turning to ash, dissolving into the air until there was absolutely nothing left. No one screamed. No one tried to stop it. No one did anything at all. It was as if everyone already knew this could happen. As if it was part of the rules. As if that place, that entity, that pact had its own laws. The priest then turned to me and, with total serenity, declared, the wish has been granted. The pact is sealed. You are now part of it. And just like that, without further comment, the ceremony continued. As if nothing had happened. I was led to a wall where there was a metal seal burning hot, and without any warning, they pressed it against my back. The smell of burning flesh, the pain, the sound of sizzling metal against skin. That mark, that symbol, I carry it to this day, and I always will, because from that moment on, I was no longer free. I never would be again. Years have passed since that night, and no matter how much I tried to move forward, to build, to grow inside this game, if you can even call it a game, I had to face a truth that has never left me since. The price never stops being collected. No matter how much you think you've gained, no matter how much you think you've won, the debt is never settled. It only grows. Every step taken, every favor received, every door opened, all of it comes with an invisible, silent weight that eats you from the inside. Today, looking back, I understand that the boy who crossed the border, full of dreams and hungry for success, died. He died the exact moment he decided to cross a door that should never have been opened. And if there's anything I've learned, something marked not just on my back, but on my soul, it's this: there is no power without a price. The question was never, how much do you want to have? But rather, what are you willing to lose? This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share, because after all, more voices mean more discoveries.